Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. The future belongs to builders. Together, we explore topics of interest to legal innovators. Let's begin. Here's your host, Olga Mack.
Well, hello, everyone. It has been long. I've been a little busy and I have a little bit of a backlog of people I would love to interview and for you to meet because they are doing amazing things every day and I would love to share it with you. So I am getting back in the game and we're going to try to have these regular conversations with folks so we can all collectively learn. And today I have a fantastic guest. We've known each other for a little while. We've been on podcasts and panels together. We've collaborated. And I've been meaning to bring her to you now for a long, long time. And frankly, I've been the guilty party that scheduled and rescheduled and canceled, which is unusual because usually I don't do that. But here she is. She is right here. Dorna, welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. I am so excited that you're here. So looking forward to this conversation. For folks who haven't met you somehow, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me, Olga. You know, I'm a huge fan of your show and of you, and I'm so excited to be here with you and your audience. My name is Dorna Moini. I am the founder and CEO of Gavel, and we are an end-to-end automation suite for lawyers.
What does that mean?
Yes. So what Gavel does is we are a platform on which lawyers can build out really robust automation systems. It's everything from client intake, meaning the parts of the data that you're gathering from your clients, all the way through to document automation, rules-based automation, which means the data that goes into your documents to actually create the powerful work product that you serve to your clients, and all the way through to AI drafting and redlining and negotiation that comes through the end of the process. And a lot of what some of our customers do at Gavel is they turn these legal automation tools into legal products. And what that means is they are basically turning their legal services businesses into legal products businesses, online legal services where they can serve people at scale through a hybrid model that includes both technology and human legal services.
Oh, how cool is that? I just love that. Productizing legal services. How exciting is that? I definitely want to dive deep into that. But before we do this, what were you doing before Gavel? Was there a life, maybe a legal life before that maybe inspired Gavel?
Yes. So I practiced at two big firms before Gavel, and I was last at Sidley Austin, and it is part of what inspired me to leave the practice of law and go start Gavel, which is that at Sidley Austin, I was working on a lot of pro bono cases, and many of those pro bono cases were in the area of domestic violence. And I saw in that process how much of particularly the early phases of the case were rules-based and repetitive. And so what I really wanted to do was build a technology tool, something like TurboTax, but not for tax, for domestic violence, so that my clients could handle parts of the legal system on their own and then come to me for the parts that were the most important and the most critical to them. And so I actually ended up doing that. I got together with a friend of mine who was an engineer, built a software tool for domestic violence survivors. It was called Help Self Legal. And we launched it, got a ton of traction. And what happened was that not only were we getting traction from consumers, so the people who we were traditionally giving the legal services to, but we were also getting interest from other lawyers. And those lawyers were in many areas of law, in many jurisdictions, and they wanted to build similar tools to help them just serve their clients faster and spend their time on the more high value stuff that they went to law school for. So that was what gave us the idea for Gavel. It's the reason we started what we're doing now. And that is basically what we do at Gavel, is we help lawyers build those automated tools from end to end, gathering client data to automating documents to negotiating those with, we actually have a product that we just launched today that I can talk more about, but to really taking it all the way to the end of the final document. So been a very exciting journey.
I love that. Well, do talk about what are you guys launching today? We may as well. If it's happening today and we happen to be talking on this day, tell me more. What are you
Yes,
launching?
yes, it's fortuitous that we got to be on the podcast together here today. So we, as I said, we have been a rules-based automation system for so long. And we have so many customers and so many areas where rules-based automation is the best way to do your legal work. But at the same time, we were hearing about a lot of our customers who, after they build the first draft of their document, they wanted more generative AI tools to help them brainstorm and either redline their documents or revise pieces of inside of their documents. And so that's what we are launching today is a tool called Gavel Exec, which is an AI assistant directly inside of Microsoft Word. And it's meant mainly for small and mid-sized law firms. So it is a product that we have worked on for a long time. We have many of our current customers using it. And today's the public launch. And it doesn't require a credit card, doesn't require any sort of sales call. So really the proof is in the pudding of how accurate it is and how good the results are going to be. So I invite everyone to go to gavel.io/exec and try that out as well.
I love that. That sounds great. And I love that the beginning of the story starts with that legal aid work, with domestic violence work, very important work. Many of us graduating from law school do this work. I've done a lot of that work. I volunteered in most of the legal aid clinics in the Bay Area, and I've done quite a lot of actual work on domestic violence, which is, a big issue that is not well addressed in the society and by our courts, and many volunteers, legal lawyer volunteers and legal professionals do this. So I'm curious, in being immersed in this work, how did it shape your view on the future of law and legal technology, and kind of what does it mean to sort of succeed at doing that?
Great question. Yeah, it's a big issue that many people don't think about. And really, it comes back to access to justice. Access to justice shouldn't depend on income level. And doing this type of work really made me realize how big that justice gap really is. So the stat is that around 90% of civil legal needs go unmet. And technology really can level the playing field. I'll tell you a story about how important technology is, not just for the people who really, really, really can't afford anything, but for the middle class as well, and really equalizing who gets access to legal justice. So when I was doing some of this domestic violence work, I remember that I had one particular domestic violence survivor potential client, who came to us at the legal aid organizations that we were partnering with to take on these cases. And she was unfortunately above the income threshold to qualify for federal legal aid. So she couldn't get legal services through us because the income threshold to get legal aid is 125% of the federal poverty level or below. So that means that many middle class Americans are actually completely shut out of legal services entirely, because she was above the income threshold to qualify for legal aid, but she also couldn't afford a private attorney who is, $300, $400, $500, thousands of dollars, depending on which city you're in. So she was forced to navigate a really complex court system alone during one of the most traumatic times in her life. And that is what, we talk about a lot about the access to justice gap, and that I think some of us know about. But what this really made clear to me is that access justice isn't just a low income issue. It's a middle class crisis too.
Yeah, I have a few research projects. One is related to parenting plans through Stanford My Codex as a fellow, and the way I articulate it is that the access to justice is not just sort of indigent people problem. It is the working poor, the lower middle class, actually the upper middle class, and actually, wealthy as well, because you can ask any wealthy people how many times they signed the contract that they didn't read, and it turns out almost every time. So to me, that's an access to justice problem. Maybe they're able to kind of solve their divorce sooner, or parenting plan sooner, or whatever, domestic violence sooner, but most folks, essentially middle class, lower middle class, working poor, indigent, it's a big long tail, but now talking very quickly about 80-90% of the population. So we all have access to justice problem. It is not just indigent people problem. And I love the way you put it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a problem that we should all care a lot about. And it really impacts how we believe in the justice system itself. If you have been served in the right way by the justice system and you feel like it's fair, that's really what's holding our entire society together. So there are lots of selfish reasons to also think about access to justice, even if we're not specifically talking about the individuals who are getting access.
Well, injustice anywhere will translate to injustice everywhere.
Exactly.
Sooner or later, that's kind of the net of it. I like to double click on this term of productization of law. What does it mean? How can you make it actionable? Whether you have a small or medium or big law firm, or perhaps even in the government, or perhaps even in-house, or whatever other flavor of practice you do. Talk a little bit about what does it mean and what is the actionable steps toward getting there?
Yes, great question. So productizing means packaging your expertise, your legal expertise, into reusable and scalable formats. So think guided workflows, repeatable document sets, really modular legal offerings. And this is something that across the spectrum, you mentioned small law firms, large law firms, in-house, everyone can build tools that serve a particular audience, whoever their client is. And it helps get better results because you have predictability in a lot of these areas. And it helps at law firms, it helps lawyers actually grow revenue without necessarily growing the hours that they're working. So I'll give a few examples. At law firms, we have people building tools for, we mentioned divorce, like people building, we have so many tools for divorce that are built on Gavel, where basically what the lawyer does is they build out the questions that the person needs to answer, all of the data that you would typically sit across the table from your client and ask them one by one in your intake. And they take that information and they route it into the document. So they build the rules-based automation to ensure that every time a client answers in this way, all that information gets funneled into the documents in the right way to generate the legal packet. And that's all really, really complex rules-based logic. And then that means you can also charge your clients in that model. So you can have them charge them by flat fees. You can charge them with flat fees plus some sort of additional one-on-one service. And then this also can apply with an in-house. I know you mentioned in-house, because a lot of in-house counsel are serving these types of tools or legal services basically internally at the organization. So whether it's an SOW process, like an SOW workflow, or a training module for sales that goes through a series of workflow steps, generates a document, and then goes off to someone else for signature. Those are all ways that you can actually apply this same model to the in-house model. What I would really describe it as is you're building TurboTax or LegalZoom for any area of law, any jurisdiction, without needing to hire an engineer to help you build it.
I love that. I love it. That sounds like a great way to share your expertise, and liberating, because it sort of gives you an opportunity to build without necessarily coding. Not all of us sort of get hyped up and excited when we get up in the morning and to learn some code. That is definitely an adventure.
And as a former lawyer who sat there and tried to build out a domestic violence, this is exactly the process that I went through for the domestic violence restraining order process that we built. Most lawyers don't have the time. They have all this legal expertise, but they don't know how to actually put it into software. So there are so many out-of-the-box tools, no matter what you want to do, what you want to build, that will help you build technology out of your legal services, out of your legal expertise.
Absolutely. I want to double click on this sort of the difference you're drawing between rules-based and Gen AI-based tools. Maybe situate us in that difference. What is it and why is it important?
Definitely. So there is a place in legal for both of those, and there are places where either of them excel. And it's really important for lawyers and law firms to really understand what that is, because that's the way they're going to be able to use technology in the best way possible. So rules-based automation uses fixed logic. It's the concept of if this, then this. So example, if the client is in California and the parties have been separated for more than six months, then they might be able to get a divorce in a certain county. That kind of logic. That is really great for structured processes and anything that's rules-based. As a lawyer, you probably know which of your areas are rules-based. Forms, workflows, standardized documents, any templates where you already have that type of if this, then that logic, maybe written into a footnote or into a bracket, perfect for rules-based automation. Generative AI is non-deterministic, meaning that you're not going to get the same result every single time you do it. It's like you give it to you can give it to a really great associate, and another really great associate will get you a different result, even though they might both be right. So generative AI uses large language models to interpret and draft language from these unstructured inputs. And that there's a place for that as well. But I think there has recently been a lot of over application of the generative AI functionality to things that really should be rules-based automation. And so that's why I think it's really good for law firms and lawyers to sit down and think about where is there if this, then that logic that's going to get me to the perfect result? And where is there more room for me to need to revise and mesh with language or for redlining particularly, and this is why we introduced our Gavel exec tool. Where's there room for generative AI to really have a big impact where rules-based automation can't? So that's where I would draw the line between those two.
Very helpful, and I really like that explanation. I think we need to, when we approach our practice, we should sort of think through this. Is this an if then, or is it a more creative exercise? Because I will guide you in kind of where you spend your time, where you allocate your resources, and will give you an idea kind of how to productize things a little bit more effectively. Because the reality of legal work, it's both. Some of it is very much if then navigating the minefield, and some of it there is like sort of a creativity that you can exert once you reach mastery, when you sort of can live on intersection of different legal fields or intersection of law and business and or technology, where you can do sort of creative stuff that is sort of pushing the envelope and have fun. And this is where the strategy of it and the sort of more Gen AI flexible solution could be very helpful. I like that you mentioned this term of scalable legal products. Maybe would be helpful if sort of you explain what that means, because this is not a legal talk. This is the tech business talk. So I want to kind of you define what that means in the context of legal practice, and maybe you can walk through an example. I know you already have, like, through this divorce example that you've given, but maybe another example so people can understand how they can take their practice today and what does it mean to make it scalable without making it feel like violence to yourself.
Definitely. Absolutely. So the concept of scalable legal services is that particularly in a world where pricing is becoming a lot, I'm really talking about why is this also good for lawyers? The world is becoming so much more competitive for lawyers. Pricing is becoming more competitive. Pricing is becoming more transparent. And so the law firm is to think, how can I increase revenue without increasing the number of hours that I work and really putting myself in the red? Scalable legal services mean that you spend time building a tool or a product or a process, and then you can charge for that every single time, and typically on a flat fee. So the more you sell, the more you are gaining in revenue, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you are exponentially increasing the number of hours you work. So I'll give you another example of this. We actually I'll give you one that launched this week, which is a really exciting one, I think. Arkansas is a state where about 3 million people live. Over 17,000 child custody cases are filed annually, and many of them are complex custody proceedings. Similarly, legal aid is limited, and that means that tens of thousands of middle-income Arkansans fall through the cracks. There is a lawyer in Arkansas, Brandon Hobart, who is at WH Law. He has been working in family law for a very long time, knows the complete ins and outs of the state and the tools that have been built, he saw that there were tools out there like, just commoditized online legal services tools that were providing family law services to Arkansans, but they were not accurate. So they were applying other areas of US law that were maybe more popular, not for the state that is very underserved and only has 3 million people in it. And so people who would use those services were getting kicked back in the courts. So he said, I know this area. I'm going to go out and solve this problem. I'm going to go build an online legal platform for Arkansas family law. And so this week, he actually just launched a platform for custody proceedings. It's called Arkansas Law Now. And he's going to launch more areas of family law in the future. But he's already gotten a ton of customers who are starting to use the platform, and they can use the platform through just the DIY platform, or some of them may want to then engage as services for parts of that process as well. It's one of those areas that really is good for the lawyer because he's now got a technology product essentially that he can scale up, meaning he can continue to gain revenue from, just like a software tool. But he also has these people who were underserved, were not getting quality legal services before or any legal services, and are now able to access the justice system.
I love it. I mean, first of all, let's acknowledge that 3 million people is not a small number of people, and
Yes.
they do deserve some access to justice, if not
Absolutely.
entirely, right? So,
but it's that 3 million was not enough for any of the big companies to take note and decide that they were going to build a custom tool for that state.
Yeah, no, exactly. I love that. And what an amazing story. I would love to kind of follow his success and his ability to serve 3 million people. That's a honor for anyone, really, especially someone who just merely has a law degree.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah. ArkansasLawNow.com for anyone out there who's in Arkansas or has any friends in Arkansas who they can forward it on to.
I love it.
Really admirable
I
platform.
love that. This is great. I want to talk a little bit about this idea of automation versus personalization. And because you kind of hear a lot of objections, I'm sure you do. I hear this all the time, how there's a trade-off, and sure, there's sort of access to more people, to justice and all of that. So sure, you make it more of a volume. But then what's lost? And what's lost is this human touch. And I usually say, I don't always want to be touched by humans. But, me flippantly saying this aside, tell me how you think about this sort of personalization versus automation, and kind of what are the trade-offs, and how do you really kind of appropriately make that trade-offs in the context of your practice, because that likely will, you and I running similar businesses or law or legal businesses may end up in different trade-offs, really. So I'm curious, kind of how do you guys, your customers, to make that automation versus personalization trade-off, and kind of to be, active participant and driver of that decision?
Yeah, great question. So I'll start maybe with just a stat. About 40% of lawyer time is actually spent on administrative tasks. So there is so much room for automation that doesn't even necessarily take away from the human nature, but is actually addressing the tasks that lawyers were, doing in an inefficient way already. And I think that that's where automation should really target the routine work. So the data intake, the document assembly, the basic communications, the automated communications that either way your clients probably think are automated, even if they're not. This really frees up the lawyer's time for strategy and empathy and judgment. And we really build systems that allow lawyers to step in where they're needed. So many consumers are actually looking for a very seamless and easy tool, like the way that they experience with all of the other consumer apps, not consumer legal apps, but consumer apps that they're interacting with. And they want the same from legal. So they want to be able to pick up their phone, sit in front of Netflix and fill out the client intake on their phone and pass it over to you. They don't really want to drive to your office, find childcare or take time off of work to come sit across the desk from you to do client intake. And so I think automation actually enables us to have more thoughtful, higher touch client experiences, because lawyers can focus on the stuff that really matters, which is listening to the client, crafting strategy and really delivering that trusted advice.
I love it. As painful as it is to admit, not everyone wants to see a lawyer, especially when there are barriers.
Exactly.
Let's that sink in.
Especially when they're just sitting there thinking, this is another 0.1 of an hour.
We're coming to the end. I have a few more questions. This has been a great conversation, and I'm so glad it's corresponding to your launch, and I'm glad that you sort of took time to explain definitions and the choices. Let's talk about the switching to productization of legal services, and specifically in the context of AI. Like, what is AI? And let me narrow it. Gen AI. What would be good examples of using it in the context of productization? And maybe which ones would not?
To answer that question, I'm actually going to give you an example of a specific tool, because there's a company called Rentervention, and they use a combination of generative AI and rules-based logic in the perfect way that takes advantage of each of their use cases. So Rentervention is a Gavel customer. They build their automation on Gavel. And what they've done is they're a platform for tenants in Illinois to basically figure out what legal remedies they have and then potentially take action on those legal remedies. The platform starts with a chatbot, and I think they call it Rennie. It's got like a cutesy name like that. And you
Hey,
chat.
names are important, okay? Like, you
Yes.
have to own them and you live with them for the rest
As
of
long
your
as
life.
no AI system takes my children's names, I am happy, because I would be really upset if one of my children's names turns into an AI name. But so it's Rennie. You talk to Rennie, you say, I have mold in my building, for example. Much of the problem is some people just don't know that the problem they have is a legal problem, or what exactly the legal remedy it is, or what the type of lawyer would be to address it. So they just say, hey, I have mold. Like, this is a problem. Rennie actually takes that it could be like, they might even just say, like, I have black specks on my wall. That's not as much something you can do with rules-based logic. So that is a place where generative AI will excel in getting you to the right decision. So it might say, okay, like, how long have you been experiencing this? Is this a rented building? Like, all these different questions. And then what it does is it takes you to a rules-based automation workflow that can help you answer the question that you need and get the actual documents you need, if in fact it has something for you. So they have a few rules-based automation tools that are built into Rentervention that handle evictions. So if you're being evicted and maybe you haven't gotten or you just got a notice and you need to respond to that, the generative AI will figure that out, and then it will take you to a workflow that is completely rules-based, where you then answer the questions and answer the information, and you get a set of documents that they know is going to be perfect every time. So if you answer the questions in a certain way, they know that you're going to get the same document every time. So I hope that answered your question a little bit more of a specific way. I think they have done it perfectly. Use the generative AI for things that you can't apply rules-based logic to and that need a little bit more critical thinking, or where there's really, really fuzzy information. Use the rules-based tool and this is all in the context of productization, rules-based tool for productization in the part where you know that every time you answer a certain way, you want the documents to be generated a certain way.
I love that. Well, I'll go back to where we started the show. I think the future belongs to builders. And by builders, I specifically say builders as opposed to engineers. Because I think all of us could be builders. In fact, if we look around and we don't like our current reality, we can complain, we can, we can kind of internalize a lot of that. Or we can look around and say, what can I change today to kind of progress at least one step forward? And that tactical, action-oriented view on life is what I think is every builder has. And that's how builders can come in the form, yes, engineers, and yes, product people, and yes, other professionals, sales, marketers, lawyers, you name it. And so I'm just curious about do you see the sort of builder movement, that builder mentality take off, among lawyers, And I'm going to say generally law firm, government, in-house, you name it. And so kind of what will that look like and on what timeline?
Yes, great question. So I think we're already seeing this. Lawyers are increasingly designing systems and not just providing services. And this starts at the law firm. Sorry, at the law school level. We are seeing. I speak at a lot of law schools. I used to teach at a law school on legal innovation, and legal education is really evolving. It's unlike what it was like when I went to law school. They're now teaching no-code tools. They're teaching legal operations. They're even teaching basic product design to prepare students for a world in which delivering legal services efficiently is just as important as knowing the law, and not only because you want to have that as part of your toolkit, but because it's a client side demand. And I think this shift in law schools is really recognizing that the lawyers of tomorrow are going to need to be builders of systems, of tools, of client experiences, not just issue spotters or brief writers. So, and we've also seen this already with so we had a few legal interns who were law students last summer, and they helped us basically build different workflows for some of our customers. And they're now going out into the job market. And just this week, I've been referenced for some of their reference calls. And it's amazing to see how impressed the law firms are with law students who have had that experience, because they're looking into the future, and they know that that's a skill that they need. So I think that's something we're going to start to see in the pretty immediate future, and we're already seeing it happening.
I love it. I love it. I think I just realized that issue spotting is a very passive skill. It only took me about 20 years of practicing law to realize that. I think you just like the bulb just lit up. Thank you for that. No, it really is. And I'd like to see more action-oriented lawyers who are actually rebuilding, reconstructing, and rethinking how we can law better. And that is a very active, intentional thing to do, as opposed to issue spotting and working within the system that is clearly malfunctioning at times when you have essentially everyone have access to justice challenge one way or another. We've come to the end, Dorna. You and I can talk all day. I love you, and I love what you do, and I love your message. So thank you so much for being here and sharing and persevering through my scheduling challenges. What is the one takeaway you want folks to take from this conversation?
Yeah, great question. And thank you so much, Olga, for having me. It's been lovely to be here. I think the main takeaway, I have so many things I want to say, but I think the main thing that I want to say is, for those lawyers who are afraid of technology isn't going to replace the lawyers, but the lawyers who are taking advantage of these systems. They're deciding where to thoughtfully implement rules-based logic, artificial intelligence, productization into their practice. They are going to be the ones who replace and outperform those who don't. And if we want a more profitable legal system and a better legal system for the consumers, these are the paths that we need to go down as lawyers.
I love the way you think. Thank you so much, Dorna, for being on the show. It was a real treat. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, audience, for joining me today. We will be back with more soon. I have a backlog of folks who I would like you to meet. And if you have any recommendations, definitely let me know. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Notes to My Legal Self. The future belongs to builders. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Keep in mind, the future of law is all lit up. Let's roll up our sleeves, innovate, build, and change the world of law together. See you soon.